Ganana Ganapatigam Avamahe Kavinka Vinamupamasravastamam Eshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspadhana Shinvanhotivisida Sadhanam Mahaganadipataye Namaham Sadashiva Samharambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Pariyantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shruti Smrti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Bhadarayanam Sutravashyakrito Vande Bhagavanta Punapuna Yadvare Nikhilanilim Paparishit Siddhim Vidatte Nisham Srimat Sri Lasitam Jagat Gurupadam Natvatma Truptingata Loka Jnana Payoda Pata Naduram Shri Shankaram Sharmadam Shankara Bhagavad-Padacharya Guruvaram Jayami Jyotirmayam Om Nadahe Sarva Vidyanam Vishaje Vavarojinam Gurave Sarva Lokanam Dakshinamurtaye Namah Ishvara Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavatyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namah Om Namah Pranavartaya Shuddhajnanaika Murtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namah. Every year, Shankara Jayanti is observed on the day of Shukla Paksha Panchami in the month of Vaishakha or Vaigasi. Now, on this auspicious day, it's not only relevant but necessary that we remember the great revolutionary achievements of Adi Shankaracharya, but for whom, for all practical purposes, there would not have been Hinduism today. We will briefly go through his life history and his achievements. There's not enough time to go through all that he did, but we will cover with a bird's eye view of the entire spectrum of his life and also touch upon briefly some of his works. For historically, the period of Shankaracharya is considered to be between 788 AD to 820 AD in the Christian era. The state of Hinduism before Shankara came on the scene was very pathetic. Pathetic in the sense it was completely non-conformal with its definition. What is the definition of Hinduism? The definition, the internet definition that's given is that because it came from Indus Valley, that's why they're called Hindus. No, that's nonsense. Him apashabdham dushayati khandayati iti Hinduhu. Dushayati khandayati. Him apashabdham. One who destroys adharma, condemns adharma and unrighteousness is a Hindu. That's a true definition. But this definition lost its meaning just before the advent of Adi Shankaracharya. Hinduism did not live up to its laudable ideals. So what was the state of Hinduism before Shankara came on the scene? It was an age of fuming confusion, confounded. It was a chaotic intellectual anarchy, and it was an age of social decadence. And Hinduism, for all practical purposes, was almost smothered within the enticing entanglements of the philosophy of the other religions that were prevalent at the time. So, each Pandit had his own followers. Like these days, we have these gurus, they have their own followers. Same thing, similar that happened. Each Pandit had his own followers, his own philosophy. Like now it's happening. Even Lord Shiva is being renamed as Adi Yogi. What a blasphemy. Blasphemy. So, the Hindu society got disunited and broken into any number of sects and denominations. That was the state of Hinduism just before Adi Shankara came on the scene. There were all these literalists, like intellectual literalists and ritualists, following the Vedas to the letter and not to the spirit. And there were these pseudo-philosophers ready to tear down everything that was sacred and ancient. And there was this ritual that were heinous and violent, and that were given religious sanctions. So Hinduism became more of ritualistic, with emphasis on the Brahmanas portion of the Vedas alone, ignoring the Aranyakas and the Upanishads. In other words, the Hindu society, the Hindu Dharma, was drifting without a goal, without a captain, a ship that was lost on the sea amidst the storm and hurricane and tsunami of the attack of other religions. It was almost ready to drown. The ship was almost ready to drown. And that's when Lord Shiva said, "Let there be Adi Shankara." Shankara was born to establish Sanatana Dharma and destroy the wicked and crooked ways of thinking and impart the life-sustaining philosophy of the Advaita of the Upanishads. His birth was in Kaladi. Parents were Aryamba and Shivaguru. Did not have children for a while. Most of you know the story, so we'll not dwell on it. So after he was born, his father passed away when Shankara was hardly 3 years old. At 5 he is initiated, and when he was only 6 years old, he composes this Bala Bodhi Sangraha. And when he was only 7, composes Kanakadara Stotram. And only when he was 8, hardly 8 years old, his mother could not go to the river as she used to because she was sick with fever. So Adi Shankaracharya, this 8-year-old boy, changes the course of the Purna river. So even if you go to Kaladi today, you would see this river has taken a turn and flows by where Shankara used to live, and then turns around and goes back, resumes its normal course. That's only when he was 8. Then his Gurukula is completed, and by the time he is 8 years old, he takes sannyasa, and then in search of a guru, walks for 2 months, a distance of 2,000 miles, to go to Madhya Pradesh, Omkareshwar, to meet his guru, Govinda Bhagavad Padacharya. So, on the way, before he crosses the river Narmada to the other shore where the guru is, he encounters a Narmada that's in full spate, in flood. And he contains the entire flood in his kamandal and walks over. And all these disciples of Govinda Bhagavad Padacharya are so happy that Shankara saved their guru, because the guru was in samadhi and would have been swept away in the floods. When the guru opens his eyes and he says, "Who are you?" And Shankara answers beautifully with a dasa sloki. Na bhumir na toyam na tejo na vayuhu. Shiva kevaloham Sivoham, Sivoham, Chidananda Rupam, Sivoham. I am none of these 5 elements, nor a combination of these 5 elements. So right then and there, Guru recognizes that this is the one to revive and save Hinduism. And right away, the Guru assigns him a couple of tasks to write commentary on Vishnu Sahasranam, etc. And then he spends another 4 years under his Guru. Then he visits Kashi, encounters all the Pandits, and he also accepts Padmapada as his disciple. The other notable event in Shankaracharya's life, the meeting with the Chandala to re-establish the philosophy of Dvaita, happens at this point of time, and he composes Manisha Panchakam. And by the time he's 14 and 15, he's in Badrikashram, up in Uttar Kashi, and he recovers the idol of Narayana, Badri Narayana, from Narad Kund, and establishes Badri Narayan, and also assigns a Nambudiri Brahmin to do the daily rituals. Even today, it's only these Nambudiris from Kerala go all the way to Badrikashram to do the pujas. And then he writes commentary on the Prasthana Trayi, or the Nyaya Prasthana, Brahma Sutra commentary, Shruti Prasthana, commentary on the Upanishads, and Smriti Prasthana, commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. So these commentaries are standard references among the learned circles of Advaita Vedanta. And then he also encounters with Veda Vyasa, who gives him another extension of 16 years for his life and gives him further directions to win over the Karmakandis or the ritualists and re-establish the spirit of the Vedas. So it's after this meeting with Veda Vyasa, he encounters Kumarila Bhatt and Mandan Mishra. So Kumarila Bhatt is on his last few hours of life, and then he directs him to go and meet his disciple Mandan Mishra. The encounter with Kumarila Bhatt happens in Prayag, and then Mandan Mishra's encounter and the discussions happens. After that, then Mandan Mishra loses the debate, and Shankara accepts him as his disciple under the name Sureshwaracharya, who eventually becomes the very first Shankaracharya of Sringeri Matam. Now his Digvijayam, the sojourn all over India, takes place when Shankara is past 16, so he does this till he is 32, till the last minute when he dismantles his body. So he visits Nasik, Panchavati, goes to Sri Shailam, encounters with the Kapalikas, then he goes to Gokarna, Mukambika, performs so many miracles, including reviving a dead boy. And then he also goes to Sriveli, where Hastamalaka meets him, who is deaf and dumb. And then when his parents bring him to Shankara, and Shankara asks him, "Who are you?" Then he explodes into this beautiful Advaitic Vedanta verses. So that's Hastamalaka. Then he establishes temple for Sharada Devi in Sringeri, and that's when he composes Atmabodh, Viveka Chudamani, and Aparoksha Anubhuti, where he takes Totakacharya as a disciple. Then he goes to Puri retrieves Lord Jagannath from Chilka Lake and establishes a temple. And then back to Kasi, where he sings his famous Bhaja Govindam. And then he goes across to the west, to Saurashtra, Girinar, Dattatreya place, and Somnath and Dwaraka. And then he finally goes all the way up north to Kashmir, and he was able to climb up to the Sarvajna Peetham by defeating all these philosophers of Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya and Yoga, and Buddhism and Jainism, and establishes the supremacy of Advaita Vedanta and ascends to the Sarvajna Peetham in Kashmir. Then he goes to the east, Assam and Nepal, and then there he encounters Abhinavagupta, wins over them. Then he goes westward again, and finally he goes to Badrikashram, where he composes Prashnottara Malika. Prashnottara Malika. It's kind of an FAQ, which I have referred to a couple of times before. The question and answers. So his disciples request him to give them a summary of his teaching. So which in the Prashnottara Malika he does that, and then he just walks over and just disappears, just dismantles his body into lightrons, photons, electrons, whatever you call it. So Shankara just melts his body into light. So there is no remains of Shankara's physical body, because he completely melts into light. So that, in brief, is the life of Adi Shankaracharya. Now, there is no way absolutely, that anyone can describe this great avatar. He was the greatest yogi, a jnani, greatest bhakta, you name it. In all branches of Hinduism, he was an expert, ultimately re-establishing the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. For all practical purposes, he was a mobile university. So not only he was a stalwart, an intellectual stalwart, a jnani, a towering jnani, bhakta, uncomparable, and a statesman. After all, being all this, he was a statesman who united India and saw a vision for India with his down-to-earth approach to the problems of India. And he did this with compassion, irrespective of caste or creed. He had the love for the people, whatever religion he belonged to. He never used violence. It was all by friendly discussions that he conquered all his so-called enemies. And the biggest achievement of Adi Shankaracharya is that he grouped all the leaders of Hinduism under the name of Dasanamis. The Dasanami sannyasi tradition is still prevalent in India. And then he divided India, as a very practical statesman, he divided India into 4 quarters, administrative quarters, the north, the south, east and the west. And in the east, he established Govardhan Mutt in Jagannath Puri, and the Tirth is Mahodadi, and the deities are Jagannath and Vimla, and the disciple who took over that administration of the eastern region was Padmapada. And the Mahavakya for the Jagannath Puri is Prajnanam Brahma. For Jagannath Puri, the Veda was Rig Veda. Then in Sringeri establishes Sharada Peetham and Tungabhadra river, Tirtha. Chandramaulishwara and Sharada Devi, the deities. Sureswaracharya is in charge, administrating Sharada Peetham for the south. Aham Brahmasmi is the Mahavakya, and the Veda is Yajurveda. Dwaraka, Kalika Dham, Gomati river, Siddheswara and Bhadrakali. And the disciple who took over the charge of the western region was Astamalaka. The Mahavakya was Tattvamasi. The Veda is Samaveda. And up north, Jyotirmatam, Badrikashram, Jyotirmatam, Alaknanda, Vishnu and Purna Giri. The deities, Badrinarayan and Totakacharya took over that administration of northern region. Atma Brahma is the Mahavakya, and the Veda is Atharva Veda. So that's how he established the four divisions, which are still prevalent and continued. And to give a brief summary, he came on this earth to solve a huge problem for Hinduism and Hindus, and his genius and practical approach did solve the problem. And the religions that almost took over India completely, they were all driven away beyond the shores of the country. And Adi Shankaracharya reintegrated all the philosophical thoughts. And to put it very briefly in the words of Swami Vijayananda, after centuries of wandering, not years, centuries of wandering, tired and fatigued, Bharatadesham, India, came back to her own thoughts. That's in summary what Adi Shankara accomplished. And his clarion call, which all of you should repeat as a mantra, his clarion call was always, don't get lost in this show. Don't get lost in this show. This is very transient. This is like a water bubble that won't even last for a few seconds. Such is life. Such is this show, the drama that you're involved in, Maya. It says, awake. Tasmat Jagrata, Tasmat Jagrata, Tasmat Jagrata, Tasmat Jagrata. Om Sivoham, Om Sivoham, Om Sivoham. Therefore, awake. Therefore, awake. Therefore, awake. Tasmat Jagrata, Tasmat Jagrata, Tasmat Jagrata. Om Sivoham, Om Sivoham, Om Sivoham.